Hi guys, so we are continuing our work with supplementary angles. Um, Here I have a problem that I'm going to model for you how to solve. If we take a look at the directions, it says we have to solve for n, show all work, and circle your final answer. So here we have two angles, okay? Our first angle is 4n plus 22, and our second angle is 8n minus 10. And we know that these two angles form what we call a linear pair, okay? A linear pair is just two angles that make up a straight angle. Here's our straight angle here. Our straight angle is simply a straight line, okay? And because they form a linear pair, that means they equal 180 degrees because all lines, all straight lines, are 180 degrees. Okay? So to solve for n, our first step is going to be to take these two expressions, our 4n plus 22 and our 8n minus 10, and take the sum of them. Remember, sum means just to add. So we're going to add these two expressions together and make an equation, okay, that's equal to 180. Now remember the difference between expressions and equations. An expression, like these two, if you notice, they do not have an equal sign. An equation, by contrast, does have an equal sign. Okay, so let's start out by doing that first. So we're going to go ahead and click on our pen. Now, just to let you know, I'm using my mouse, but you guys have touch screens on your Chromebooks. So if you want to use a stylus or your finger, you can go ahead and use either of those as well. Or if you have a mouse and you want to use your mouse, you can use that too. Okay, you do have options. Okay, but I am using my mouse now. So we're going to start by combining our two expressions here. So we have 4n plus 22 plus 8n minus 10 equals 180 degrees. So again, the only thing I did is I took my two angles here, the 4n plus 22, which is this angle, and the 8n minus 10, which is this angle, and I set them equal to 180 degrees, okay? Added them together and set them equal to 180 degrees, again, because they form this straight angle here, okay? So now that we have our equation, we can go ahead and solve for n now, okay? Our first step is going to be to combine like terms. So we need to take a look at the equation and see, okay, what terms are like, okay? I see here we have, let's start with our variables. So we have our n's here. So we have 4n and we have 8n. And they're both positive. This is positive 4n plus a positive 8n. So when we combine those together, 4n plus 8n, we get 12n. Okay, so those were like terms. What else are like terms? Okay, I see we have 22 here, which is positive, and negative 10. Now these are both constants, so we can combine these two together. So 22 minus 10 is going to give us a positive 12. So I'm going to go ahead and put plus 12 here. Now, if you're not strong with your subtraction, what I would advise you to do for the 22 minus 10 is to open up your online calculator. You can just do a Google search, as I did, and this is just a Google online calculator, and we can have plugged that in. We could have done 22 minus 10 and see that that's equal to 12, okay? Now, we've combined everything that we can combine on this side of the equation. So now we're just going to bring down the rest of the equation. So we're going to bring down our equals 180. Okay, so we have 12n plus 12 equals 180. Now, we need to break this equation down further. Remember, the whole point of us doing equations, okay, solving equations, is to get the variable by itself. So we want to isolate the variable on one side. Okay, if we see here, we have a constant. We want to get rid of this constant. We want all our variables on one side and all our constants on the other. Okay, we already have the 180 on this side of the equal sign, which is a constant. We want to try to get this 12, which is also constant, to the other side of the equal sign as well. To do that, we need to do the inverse operation. Remember, inverse means opposite. Okay, so here we have addition, okay, or a positive 12. So to get rid of this 12, we need to do the inverse, the opposite, which would be negative 12 or minus 12. So we're going to subtract 12 from both sides of the equation, okay, or both sides of the equal sign. Why do we do that? To make sure we keep the equation balanced. Okay, if we look at the left-hand side, these 12s are actually going to cancel. We have a positive 12 and a negative 12. So when we combine those, we're just going to end up with nothing. And then we're left with our 12n. Okay, so we've gotten rid of our constants on the left. Equals, and then we have our 180 minus 12. Again, go ahead to your online calculator. Just clear it out. We're going to do 180 minus 12. And that gives us 168. So we'll write 168 over here. Okay, and now we've broken down our equation further. So we have 12n equals 168. So now what we want to do is we want to do, again, the inverse operation. Here we have 12n. Remember, this really means 12 times n. There's an invisible multiplication sign between that 12 and n. Okay, so whenever we have a number next to a variable like this, it means that multiplication is implied. So we want to do the inverse, the opposite. The opposite of multiplication is division. And remember, when we're doing equations, division is now represented by a fraction bar. So we're going to do fraction bar on both sides of the equation, again, to keep it balanced. And we're going to divide by whatever's in front of our variable, because that's what we want to get rid of. So we're going to divide by 12 on both sides. Okay. When we divide by 12, this is going to cancel because 12 divided by 12 is just 1. Okay, so we're left with our 1n on this side. And that's going to equal 168 divided by 12. So again, go to your calculator. We still have our 168 in there. So I'm just going to click divided by 12. And that gives us an answer of 14. So I'm going to put 14 here. Okay, so we solve for our variable. We see that n is equal to 14. So I would just go ahead and circle that. And then I would stop there. Okay, because the directions say to solve for n. Okay, so this is what you would need to do. You need to show all your work and circle your final answer, and that would be sufficient. Now, if the directions, okay, because this is one possible directive that you could be given, but you may also be asked to solve for the actual angle measures. Remember, all we did now is we just solved for n. The directions may tell you solve for the measure of one or both angles. Okay, so now let's take a look at what that would look like. Okay, so here the directions have changed. The last direction said solve for n. This says find the measure of both angles, show all work. Okay, if the directions ask you to do this, that means not only do you have to solve for n, okay, which we just did, but now you'll also have to plug in the value for n into both expressions to find out what the actual angle measures are. Remember that there's two angles here. This was our first angle, and this is our second angle. But we know what n is equal to. N is equal to 14. We know that because we just solved for it over here. Okay, n is equal to 14. So now to do what the directions are telling us to do, to find the measure of both angles and show all work, okay, what we have to do is we'll have to simplify each expression individually. So let's start with our first expression here. We have 4n plus 22. Okay, so now wherever we see an n, we're going to substitute that n for 14 because that's the value of n. So this is really going to be 4 times 14 plus 22. Remember, these parentheses stand for multiplication, okay? So if we do 4 times 14 plus 22, I'm just going to go to our calculator. We have our 14 in there, times 4 equals 56, and then we're going to add 22 to that. and we get 78. So this expression here would be equal to 78. So that means this first angle is going to measure 78 degrees. I'm just going to go ahead and write that in. Okay. I'll just label this with the measure of angle 1 equals 78 degrees. I'll go ahead and circle that. And then we have to find the measure of angle 2 now. So that's a separate expression. So again, we're going to write the expression an minus 10. And we know what n is now because we've already solved it. So we're going to do 8 times 14. Again, we're substituting the value for n. Wherever there's an n, we're putting in 14 minus 10. Okay, go to your calculator, clear it out. So now we're doing 14 times 8, which equals, and then minus 10, which equals 102. So we would say the measure of angle 2 equals 102 degrees. And I would circle that. And I'm just going to write it in here too, 102 degrees. Now, a way to check to make sure that we're correct, okay, is we know that these two angles, okay, are a linear pair, which means they make up a straight angle here, which means the sum of them should be equal to 180 degrees. So if we solve these two expressions correctly, when we add the two angles together, we should get 180 degrees. So let's check that out. Let's do a check and see if we're correct. Okay, so if we do 78 plus 102, it should equal 180 degrees. Let's check that out. So we have our 102 already in there, plus our 78, and look at that. It equals 180 degrees. So we know now that it checks, it works. Our work is accurate. Okay, so now I've shown you two different possible directives that you could be given. If the directions tell you just to solve for n, you would solve like this and then stop there, okay, because you have your value for n. But if the directions tell you to find the measure of one or both angles, then you not only have to solve for n, but after you get n, then you need to substitute the value into either one or both of the expressions to get the actual angle measures. Okay? So in your next lessons, you're going to be doing both. Okay? You're going to be solving for n, and then you're also going to be solving for the measure of the actual angles. Okay? You can use this video to help you figure out both. I hope this helps. Good luck.